Okay, my clock says 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started here and call our meeting to order. Okay, 1 second. That's here. Good. Are we good to go? Where are we at? Okay, no problems. Okay, so the recording is going. We'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. It is March 25th at 6 p.m. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Wheelwright.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, now we'll go ahead and start our roll call.
Ann Allen, no conflicts.
John Lyons, no conflicts.
Matt Wheelwright, no conflicts.
Joel Temple, no conflicts.
And Jonathan Hill, no conflicts. Before we begin our meeting, I'll just go ahead and read our customary statement on decorum. Although this is a public hearing, only the presenters and those invited by the commission may speak or ask questions, unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on. When speaking, be sure to speak into the microphone so that the record is clear. Please state your name and city of residence for the record at the beginning of your comment. Please limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. If you need to have a conversation, please step out of the chambers. Please do not attempt to interrupt or speak over others. Intimidating or threatening speech or behavior will not be tolerated at any time. Please refrain from clapping, cheering, booing, or being otherwise disrupted during the hearing. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and move to our first item this evening. Development Services requests Ordinance Text Amendments to Title 14 to remove power generation as a permitted use in the data center overlay zone and update environmental impact requirements. This is a citywide application, and Hannah Salzer will present it for us.
Hello, this is fairly straightforward, and we did warn you when we were doing our data center overlay code that as we found opportunities to clean up and more fully meet the priorities that had been expressed by the council and the administration, that you'd probably be seeing some amendments coming. These are those. Overall, with the data centers, our four biggest concerns as a city were utility rates, grid load, air pollutants, and water use. Those first two, utility rates and grid load, have been mostly addressed by the UMPA standards. These two are remaining to address some of the air pollutant and water use concerns. So, brief summary, they remove power generation as a permitted use, which has a few ripple effects. Caps data centers at 50 megawatts because anything over 50 megawatts per UMPA code has to build their own power generating facility. If we don't allow that, that's a pretty effective cap. It also removes the need for the 500-foot setback for sensitive properties because no data center is going to be generating the level of pollutants that would require emissions credits without power generation. It does maintain the 200-foot setback, however, for all data centers from sensitive properties. It also removes the requirement to report consideration for renewable energy on site. And for the full air quality analysis and mitigation plan, it becomes a little bit of a hollow requirement. There's not a lot to report and not a lot to be mitigating. But we do still want them to provide us an estimation of the amounts of listed pollutants and how that compares to similar sized office buildings. The difference will be mostly created by any generators that they're running on site. So that lets us really target in on the above average pollutants that they would still produce from those sources. We would also require with these proposed amendments non-evaporative cooling measures. Before we left that up in the air because the more you're moving the water around, sure, the less water you're moving, but the more energy you're using, which can drive people to produce more air pollutants as they're scaling up their energy generation. This would, since the cap is so limited and since water has become an even greater priority, this would increase the power load, but would still push for smaller data centers with that 50 megawatt cap. So those two do interact. It also, these amendments would prohibit discharge into the municipal waste system. These data center water systems are often treated with biocides to prevent mold buildup or anything like that that might damage the systems. Our wastewater team does have some concerns about what that would do to our overall bio-life balance of our wastewater as it's entering the system. These are these filling and removal sites by third companies for cooling water is a service that's already available. You heard about it with the other data center that came through. And lastly, it would remove the requirement for the third-party environmental analysis for data centers over 5 megawatts, which was proposed by this committee and was a good recommendation that staff supported. But as I was reaching out to other companies, who would do these analyses, if we are removing the major pollutant and water use sources, there's not a lot left for them to analyze. And they weren't sure how they'd be able to price that out or what report they would even really be able to give. It would be fairly minimal. So we feel like most of that can be done in-house, especially because with the other requirements, with the exception of the generators, really does limit their water and power use to the operation of a fairly large office building. Otherwise, as noted on the bottom, we preserve the other reporting requirements and the city's high level of discretion on projects, which was the target of the initial overlay zone. Any questions?
Thank you, Hannah. Any questions? Yes, right. John?
Yeah, I have some questions. So why is the 50, can you talk to the 50 megawatt limit? What's the point there? Is there?
That was set by Utah Municipal Power Agency. So it wasn't a limit that we put. The 50 megawatt was just that that's what they felt they would be able to provide from the market. Anything under 50 megawatts has to get their power from the Provo grid.
Okay. So then why are you looking for a categorical prohibition for generating on site versus performance-based standards or something like that?
There's two reasons coming from our discussions largely with the council administration. There seems to be a real appetite for limiting the pollutants, and by targeting energy generation that is the major pollutant source in a way that is clear-cut, easy to interpret standards, which is what the council wanted to see. Something like energy performance does get a little bit more hairy, especially as the energy generating sector is becoming, it's evolving right now. It's in a bit of a state of flux. So something that's a clean line seemed easier for the council. The council also seemed to express an appetite for smaller data centers that could network within the community rather than being their own large mega facilities, like something with power generation on site. This helps accomplish that as well.
So back to the 50, so smaller, is it possible to have multiple small ones? Each one is less than 50 megawatts?
It would be limited per site.
Per
so
site.
You could have two adjacent sites of 45 megawatts by legal code if these were adopted.
So there are other power generation that are less pollutant or non-pollutant, right?
Mhm.
Solar, wind, fuel cell, other kind of things. Why are we saying no generation at all? So you can't even put a solar cell on a solar panel on it, that would prohibit this, right?
That is a really fantastic question, something we addressed in the initial overlay zone as we were creating it. State law in Utah requires that for data centers, anything that has continuous power usage, they have to have 100% on-site battery backup for any renewables generating energy on-site. And at that point, what we heard from data centers is that with the amount of power they have to generate, having 100% battery backup is prohibitively expensive. They're simply not going to be able to do that for the foreseeable future.
What about fuel cell?
That is where we get into some of this evolving technology that's a little bit difficult to regulate at a municipal level right now.
So the easiest answer is just don't worry about it, say no to it, and let that technology bypass us.
This was seen as the lowest consistent standard common denominator that would address council's concerns. If the planning commission wants to propose amendments or alternatives, that's within your right.
Okay. Has there been any fiscal impact of this? And so what would the cost to Provo be by taking this step? Do we have any way to anticipate what that's going to be the next, I don't know, many years, 5, 10, 20 years out?
Very much depends on the types of data centers that are allowed to be built in Provo that the council approves. The data centers that generate the highest revenue would be the largest, and this would cap those larger, higher revenue data centers. However, if those are the sorts of projects where the council, due to other size, infill, air quality concerns, is unlikely to approve them, then it's a bit of a moot point. So it's difficult to determine exactly.
So I'm hearing we really don't know then, right? And
Yeah.
hasn't been any projection of that. So we talk about requiring grid interconnection, right?
Mhm.
Why is that?
Because of the 50 megawatt grid, that anything under 50 has to get it from Provo Power, which means they have to be fully connected.
So I guess I'm thinking, so if you say we don't know fuel cells, so we're not going to do fuel cells. So I'm a little concerned about that. That feels like there's an important technology that's coming and that we should understand how it impacts us and understand what's going on. So the question is, if we were to allow fuel cells and not be interconnected to the grid, would that be a concern for
UMPA already prohibits islanded power generation. That was in their original standards. Even if we took it out of our code, it would still be part of our power providers provisions. We wouldn't allow anything that
would be
we,
island?
Provo Power speaking, and
Okay.
Provo's utilities wouldn't allow anything that wasn't connected to the grid, regardless of energy source.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions?
So we last time we talked about this, you brought it up again today. The technology is changing on many fronts, not just the generation or fuel cell and things. If someone comes in or the new technology arrives and it's been proven elsewhere, we get some good data, are we back to having to revise the text, or is there wiggle room to, not wiggle room, is there the opportunity to allow a good project with a good alternative, whatever it is, power, water, whatever, because of the technology, or we're going to be back here doing text amendments every time?
It would require a text amendment, but this is a strategy that's pretty common in the planning world, to go with something that is pretty conservative, and then as concepts are proven, work with the developers to specifically target the amendments rather than leaving the door too open and unintentionally letting something through. This takes that approach.
Okay.
So,
Yeah. One more question. Would this amendment effectively preclude any currently pending applications?
None that are currently submitted that we know of.
Okay.
I got a couple of questions here.
Oh, I should note, I apologize. There was the public comment.
Right.
from
There was that
someone
one.
who was looking to develop, but we don't have any active permits currently submitted that I know of as I've asked around the department.
But that's the only one that's being considered right now that you know of.
There's no vested application in process at this point.
Thank you.
So they're just thinking about it. Okay. I mean, my biggest concern here is some of the limitations and how we might end up actually backing ourselves into a corner here. Do we know the marketability of a sub 50 megawatt data center, especially because if it's closed loop, the compute power of a 50 megawatt just went down because of the closed loop system, right?
Mhm.
Do we know? I mean, is that even commercially viable at this point? Or
We already have several of those in Provo.
right, but they were
on
built
smaller
earlier.
research sites, and they were
Right.
built earlier, but they are operating as sub 50 developments. And the last data center applicant that you heard was also a sub 50 closed loop system, so it
I
can
guess
be
that's
done.
true. And I'm just wondering, the pollution impacts, you just mentioned we could end up with 40 megawatt, two 45 megawatt systems basically next door to each other, both drawing power from the grid, which is now coal power, instead of perhaps something more efficient on site. And so has there been any thought about, the potential environmental impacts of multiple smaller versus fewer bigger type data centers?
Yeah, that has been discussed with Provo Power and Wade. The Provo Power sourcing for this power would have to come very slowly as the grid is expanded. Even the other data center that was coming in that you heard about was starting low at 5-ish. That's what Provo Power could provide immediately. So these would ramp up slowly as we are evaluating different policies and options coming online with data centers and power generation. There is some time to act. But that mix also is coming from a free market grid of movable power and surplus, which comes from a mix. It is largely coal, but there's also a fair amount of natural gas and a smaller mix of renewables. Provo's power is about 47% renewables at this point. So as we continue to expand our grid capacity to provide for these, it will come predominantly from clean energy. We have 100% renewable targets by 2050, 50 by 2030. The larger market is a little bit more of a mixed bag, but is generally trending toward more renewables or low emission sources.
Okay, and then finally, this relates a lot to one of John's comments or questions here. Have you guys considered kind of a conditional use permit in the zone for power generation, something that would allow extra review, but then, I don't know, kind of push people towards not wanting it kind of thing whenever possible?
Yeah, that was actually the first route that we considered. And as we shopped the idea around with different departments, talked it through, it seemed like the appetite for approving some of these larger data centers with power generation was pretty low. And it seemed like the goal with the CUP was more to add more hoops to something. And at some point in the discussion, we kind of realized if we're adding so many hoops, then why not just prohibit it? If we're adding so many options for us to say no, let's be clear about that from the beginning, but leave the opportunity open to amend the code if something really good does come through.
So just to be clear, is one of the goals here then to just basically say no big data centers, period?
I think it's an unintentional outcome, but not an outcome that, from our indication from discussions with council, that they would mind.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So since the city is the applicant, we don't need to have time for an applicant. We'll go ahead and open for public comment. Are there any neighborhood council chairs here today to speak? Okay, not seeing any, we'll open it to general comments. You will have 2 minutes to make your comment, and each person may make one comment. Please begin by stating your name and city of residence. Thank you.
I may read fast to try and get through what I want to say. My name is Jeff Chavez. I'm the CEO of Volition Industries, and I'm a Provo resident, and Provo is where our company is based. We have an active rezone application before the city. It was put on pause when we brought it through last week. That application is on hold tonight because of this amendment. I want the commission to understand exactly what's at stake. The proposed amendment effectively prohibits any data center from operating with independent on-site power generation at any scale, through two provisions that together make off-grid model impermissible in Provo. The facility we proposed for the city would bring approximately $1 billion in projected assessed value to Provo's tax rolls. That's millions of dollars annually from one parcel, with no reliance on Provo power, minimal demand on water, and no cost to your taxpayers. Provo's general fund sales of projected of 27 million. A facility like ours contributes a meaningful share of that figure from one building without asking the city for a single dollar of infrastructure in return. The technology we use is not a gas generator. It's Bloom Energy Fuel Cell, a generation with near zero emissions. There's no combustion, no traditional combustion, and significantly quieter than any conventional generator. Also used for the last 15 years, over 300,000 installations, performing with 5.9 reliability. The UMPA itself, of note, selected mainspring linear generators, the same category of clean natural gas on-site generation, for a 48 megawatt facility in Utah just last month. As Provo is investing $80 million to fix the aging water infrastructure and struggling to fund it without raising rates on residents, you have an economic development study underway right now asking which industries are worth pursuing. An important answer to that question is what I'm presenting to you at this moment. This amendment turns away the exact kind of investment your own priorities say you need. Volition is building all over the country, but we love Provo, we love Utah, we would love to build here. We either build here or continue to build elsewhere.
Thank you. Thank you.
I haven't taken any questions.
We'll call you up at the end if we have questions for you. Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. What are we thinking on this one, guys?
So you guys have a lot of thoughts, right? I am reluctant to go forward with having just recently received this information. without having longer time to understand and assess it. I don't actually have any idea about the impact to Provo. It feels like it's premature to just close the door completely on these without having more information, more understanding. I do have some questions for the public commenter about.
Sure, you're welcome to call them up if you'd like.
Would you come up and take a few questions? Thank you. The financial projections that you've made, they seem interesting. And we read through your proposal. Have they been validated by independent third party, or are they just?
No, yeah, they're validated by all of the available tax code. We have a project over 65 megawatts that's about to be proposed in a neighboring city, also under UMPA. And that project has been validated for all of the MEP tax that comes out of the natural gas line that we use and the asset tax.
So bottom line impact financial to Provo, from your point of view on an annual basis, what would that be?
The current project that we began to submit that was put on hold will generate between $2.5 and $4 million annually to your budget.
Okay, thank you. Do you have full emission profiles, CO2, all emissions for that?
Oh yeah. So
And they'll support your earlier.
Absolutely. Bloom Energy is widely known public company. They're 30 years old and they're being adopted very rapidly, especially for this use. Our whole business model is to build smaller data centers near metro because it's needed for inference and speed, and to do it in a community-friendly way. We want to bring tax revenue. We want to be way under emissions, which we are, and we want no noise. These systems are like standing next to a Tesla. They're very, very quiet.
Any public safety or emergency response considerations for the on-site generation?
None. Yeah, public safety, no. We've had Bloom has had no incident with the fuel cell in their entire distribution 25. It's a chemical, there's no combustion, which is such a key element. There's no burning of the fuel.
So if we were to set performance-based conditions, you feel fully confident that your project would be able to meet any reasonable performance-based conditions then?
Yeah, absolutely. We're building in California, San Francisco area. They're the highest standards you can possibly find. We meet the most stringent requirements.
I have so many questions.
Yeah, one more then. Do you have any long-term externalities? You haven't mentioned anything beyond there that we haven't talked about that we should be aware of for your project?
Well, I think that you had a question about, could you do small locations? That is our model. We have a backlog to build throughout the U.S. from Oracle, NVIDIA, public companies, municipalities, hospital networks, and we will build them anywhere from 2 megawatts, think of a 20,000 square foot building, up to 55 or 60 megawatts, for the very purpose of being able to do them in a way that is totally outside what has been the previous model of data center, which is energy taxing. We know all the reasons. So we're literally the first company in the US that is specifically community-friendly data center application. And each data center that we would build, we already have customers who are signed for all of those. The one that we're doing south of you will house OpenAI and Cerebras, which is a very large company about to go public. So we have massive amount of demand. We could build in Provo. We have identified locations that are nicely outside. They're in industrial areas. We could build 200 megawatts here. And that 200 megawatts turns into closer to $15 million over time. We could do that over the next 4 years, and we would love to. We do have that much demand to build it.
Okay.
And
Sorry, I've lost some of the questions, but how much land, the one you want to build, let's just concentrate on the one you just spoke about that you have an application on hold for. How big, how many megawatts is it?
It would be between 30 and 40 megawatts. It is, gosh, it's on Sierra Vista, just as you get into Springville. And right now, the first half of the building is Vox.
Yeah, I know right where you're talking
And it's the
about.
second half of that building. The other building that is perfect for us is to fill some of the newly vacant space in the Vauxhall building. I think that's the think I'm saying.
Okay, so under this, you could build that because the cap's at 50 megawatt and you're saying you want 30.
No, we can't because of the specific requirement that we have to connect to the utility. So that requirement is a non-starter for
Okay,
us. We,
so where do you get your power from?
natural gas.
Okay,
So we work with Enbridge. We already have the
Okay.
order in. It costs us actually a couple $1 million and we upgrade our natural gas pipe into the building. And the opinion, legal opinion, and UMPA has actually conceded this recently, is that the only jurisdiction they have is if we in any way are asking to touch the grid. If we're not touching the grid in any way, UMPA has no jurisdiction over on-site power. It's up to the city.
okay, hold on. So Enbridge gas, and so Enbridge is gonna have to bring in more natural gas. We're gonna burn more natural gas. Any idea how much?
We don't burn any gas. I just want to be real clear on that.
Yeah, keep
That's-
talking about how much, because the only thing that the council really cares about and the citizens of Provo is how much noise, how much water are you going to contaminate, and what's the air going to look like?
Yeah, I love it because we meet all of, so remember when you first,
But even if we're meeting EPA, like people just want to understand what that means. Like the EPA's, some standards still seem untenable for some residents here. So that's why I'm like, can you make that clear?
oh, I think we
What
could,
you're proposing?
yeah, I think we can make it very clear because the system itself, number one, I happen to live right where the school was just built, right across the street. And for 2 years, my wife and I woke to our entire house shaking as that whole thing was done. So I have an appreciation for noise. This is like standing next to you don't hear it. So that's something that is proven easily as a non-issue. We have study after study.
Okay, I'm just going to ask follow-up. Can nature hear it? Are deer going to start dying? Like, tell me what,
Oh, no. This is more
are all the
quiet
moths
than
going
a
to not
car.
follow the
This is
moon?
more quiet than an HVAC system running on the back of your
To
building.
all manners of life,
Oh,
right? Biological life.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
This is,
all right.
it is extremely below decibel. And in the report that I sent to you today or earlier this week, there's there's 10 pages here. And some of those data points are outlined there, and we can provide much more. In the submission that we began to submit here to the city, we provided pages of documentation. So we're confident that we'll be able to demonstrate. And
So what about air pollution? I'm going to move on from noise.
well, just here's the primary piece. Air pollution happens when we combust fuel. The Bloom fuel cell does not combust fuel. It creates a chemical reaction within a chemical plate that creates electricity. And the byproduct of that is heat and water. And that's it.
Okay, so we have to cool it then.
You don't have to cool it. We just have to keep them outside. We can't put them inside a building because you do have to have ventilation, but they run outside in a very cleanly fenced field. So there might be a half an acre of these in a very nice industrial fenced area.
So our products are heat and water. What's in the water? Like, tell me about what this water's
Clean.
like. Like I can water my plants with it
You
without
can
putting lead
water your
into them.
plants with the water. There's no, yeah, it's everything that I'm explaining is, we will be happy to very clearly verify for you. And behind Bloom, and this is kind of to the point about, I think cities are not yet current on what's coming. So there were some phrases here about, hey, things are coming. They're here now. These advanced fuel cells, the mainspring technology that UMPA just agreed to implement, they're phenomenal technologies with extreme sensitivity to environmental protection because it's just required now. So what we're doing, you will see everywhere in the US. We do happen to be really the first doing it. We'll be a public company by the end of next year. And our demand sees us building out over 400 megawatts of these systems.
So just real quick, I don't want to cut you off, but I do have a follow-up question on the chemical reaction because there's carbon in natural gas. So what happens to the carbon in the reaction? It's not just hydrogen, so it can't just be water.
It is water and heat. So if the heat is coming and carrying that carbon monoxide, that's where it is, but it is far below any requirement it's very, very low.
Right. Yeah. A fuel cell would have far less than burning it would.
Oh, it's,
But there still has to be carbon dioxide output.
that's why
because
we
there's
don't
carbon.
say, that's why we don't say it's emission free.
I
It
wish
is
we had a
extremely
comparison
low.
so that we can, because this is going to be listened to by the state, it's going to be listened to by the city council. So that's why I'm like, give
Yeah.
me an example. Like your 135 megawatt, how much carbon are you putting out? Like as much as a cow? As much as a, do you know what I'm saying? I need an equivalent
Let half of the amount of an HVAC system,
of an HVAC system
like
for
a current
a commercial building or
advanced home HVAC.
a residential?
Yeah, it's, so I can't quantify for you.
Per
I think-
day or per year? What are you, how much carbon are we talking about? Like if you had an HVAC system, you're saying the HVAC system for your building is going to put out more carbon than
yeah.
actually the system you're
Absolutely.
using for your AI?
Absolutely.
How much space how much ground are you going to take up for this?
We use about 1 acre of fuel cell for 30 megawatts of power. So we look for buildings that give us enough space for the computers inside, and that have, you know, a little bit more generous parking structure that was already built into the system. Some are tight, some are wide. So we look for buildings that have nice, generous extra space, because we don't have a big head count in the building. So we don't need 100 parking spaces. So these can be mounted easily on gravel or asphalt.
Okay, so 2 acres for a 35 megawatt-ish?
Yeah.
Okay, last question. You said we're going to have a lot of revenue. I don't remember. It was a million, like how many millions?
This building would generate between 2.5 and 4.
Per year.
Yes.
In what?
Tax revenue.
In what kind of tax? Like property tax or?
Part of it is the equipment on site. These buildings are housing, you know, believe it or not, close to $1 billion of equipment on site. That's taxable. The other is what's called an MET tax that is tied to your use of natural gas. So the city is realizing a percentage of tax on the amount of natural gas we use, and it's a massive amount of natural gas that we use. So it's a high figure for you.
So my other question would be like back to staff to say, if we put an industrial building here, box, whatever, how much tax revenue were we getting from 2 acres of that? Do you know what I needed? Like an
It'll
apples
be-
for apples?
it will
So
be-
that's a really good question, but it's not a question for tonight,
Okay,
because this is a code amendment that's very specific in front of you. And somehow we've morphed into project plan approval for an application that's not even
sure.
vested.
But,
Okay.
but then we were just thinking like, do we have too many restrictions on this to have this sort of project, right? Like that's where we're circling around to, because this sounds pretty good so far, but then we'd
So
have to do a lot of research to
That's-
verify everything, right?
That's a good question too, but that's a very different question. And the answer to that question is the staff started this process with a conditional use permit track like Hannah referred to. Conditional uses have a lot of authority in this state. The city council didn't like giving up that much control. They'd like to have more review on these. So the city council decided that a overlay zone was the better track to go. And that's why we don't have a conditional use track. It's every data center is now an overlay zone. But the problem that with this whole discussion is islanded substations or data centers aren't permitted under our current ordinance. And that's what this proposal is for. That's why it's on hold. It doesn't even meet the current ordinance. We've gotten way off track. Okay. We're talking about a code amendment that's pretty specific.
And our only request is that there's some kind of carve out to be able to at least be considered and evaluated to meet a standard, which we think we would.
Okay. Thank you. So let's try to move forward on this item. Thank you for your time. So other thoughts? What do we have here specifically on this item here? I mean, I do agree. This was a case study, if you will, in some of the issues and concerns I have with this. My personal opinion is data centers are an increasingly important part of our infrastructure. I do like the view someone mentioned last time when the data center came through that they are infrastructure. We shouldn't think about their own head count, et cetera, but what they enable as the economy grows, right? Power lines don't create a lot of jobs either, but they allow a lot of stuff to happen. And my worry right now is that we're being too strict and we're saying too no to too much and not allowing enough leeway. And everybody's just going to build this infrastructure in other cities, and then Provo becomes
But do
the
you
ghetto
think-
in the county.
Do you think we'll lose the opportunity to build the infrastructure? That's the thing. It feels like it's an ongoing demand. So I don't know if we're missing a boat or if we're just kicking a can down the road.
Right. I don't know if either
Because
is a
the
good thing.
technology is improving. So it's like, well, we may not get saddled with an old fashioned data center because we're more conservative in our approach to saying yes.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I guess I would lean towards performance-based rules. And this is something I think about. Years ago, I remember reading an article about a semi-truck that they had designed as an experimental truck, and it got 15 miles per gallon or something insane. Like, it was awesome, right? My brother happens to design semi-trucks, so I called him up and was like, hey, when's this going to hit the road? He said, never, because governments say you have to have this, you can't have this. They set all these rules, and he said half the things on that truck would never be allowed. And yet it met the goal, right, to reduce emissions better than what the rules actually did. And so since that time, I've become a big fan of saying, let's not just say no. Let's put the standards in that we are willing to accept for real legitimate concerns that we have about pollution and water usage, and then let people innovate and meet them. Right.
Which I think is happening to some degree just with the pushback of all the cities in the US, right? Like the
Yeah.
data centers they are improving because people don't want them, right?
Right.
I think that
They're
it
saying we're going
seems
to
to me that's
mitigate
what's happening.
the externalities, the costs that we're having. And so that's my question is the amendment that we have in front of us, right? We'll stay focused here. Do we feel like that helps that? Or does it just go too far and say no? And now we just miss out on good things that our community could have.
So what should we do instead? What would you, or sorry, am I cutting somebody off?
Well, and I keep struggling because, and we've talked about this before with Hannah, I can't remember what month we were in, but it was a while back. The technology is evolving. I mean, whether it's here or it's coming, other technology is coming, and how do we structure this or without making this Hannah's full-time job all the time so that there's some possibility that we can get good projects. They might become outdated a few years down the road, but they're going to be working and they're still clean and they're still quiet and those kinds of things. So I think the we can approve, deny, or what's the other term? Or continue.
Well, we're
Right.
recommending, right, on this one. Because these are amendments to code. So
This is, we can approve, continue, or deny. Is that, am I not reading that correctly? Isn't that what we're doing tonight?
Yes, but as Hannah said, if you have other ideas, you're welcome to propose what you would suggest.
Yeah.
Well, my
Joel,
problem
you
is
had
we're
your
no,
hand
we're no
up.
experts on any of this stuff. What we need is some guideposts,
yeah.
some bumpers on the lane. All right, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, yeah, conditional use permits, they're a headache, like administratively, and yeah, they're just kind of a nightmare. And so I think the point instead is, what are all the things you're trying to capture by the CUP to make those your performance standards?
Uh-huh.
You don't like a parking standard, don't make parking a conditional or parking direction conditional use. Put the standards in the code, what allows you to get the reduction. So I would feel better about, I mean, maybe we're getting kind of caught off guard by some of the projects coming to us right now because we don't know enough to put those standards in place. I know there's been a lot of research done by staff, but it is still such a new topic. Like, I mean, we're getting like reports from the American Planning Association just in the last month that are like trying to get their head around best practices. Maybe we say, instead of removing it as a permitted use, make it a conditional use for the time being while we are workshopping this code. So we're not just saying, okay, no data centers are coming to the city until we figure this out in the next year. So we're not completely, pushing everything to Orem or Springville or wherever around us.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to see good standards in place, and I think we were working on those, and I think we're making pretty good progress. Like air quality is a concern, water use is a concern, and I'm sure something will slip through the cracks that we're not thinking of now that 10 years from now will be the new technology. But yeah, I think I would maybe approach it as like, let's make it all conditional so that we can still work through any projects that are trickling in as we're rewriting and we write those performance standards and figure out exactly what they want those to be.
Couldn't an alternative to that model be continue this and allow staff to have more conversations with, there've got to be other providers or other applicants in the future. Get a group that are going to help us get there faster rather than just either kick the can down the road or any of those kinds of analogies. If we're trying to avoid conditional use permits.
Yeah, my feeling is similar to that. Either continue it until we get more information to make a more informed decision, or deny it. I'm not in favor of a strict prohibition on these. Understanding certainly that Provo has clear responsibilities we need to maintain for this, and we can't just accept them all. But I don't think that's going to happen. But I would prefer either performance-based standards to find ways to allow the industries that we want to have here.
I'm trying to remember what the reasons that so many people were against the last data center project that came to us, right? Because it kind of almost feels like, would they have met these requirements? Would they have been able to come in under the new proposed amendment? Like, everyone felt really.
Yes, to answer that, yes, they would have.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was looking at, I was like, they actually were going to tie into the grid.
Right.
They were going to be under 50 megawatts. They had setbacks. Noise was a remaining concern, I think.
So if this was approved and they came back to us with the exact same application, they would be approved?
It would be subject to council approval again, because this goes through the rezone process, but it would meet the
Right.
current standards. And the original standards preserved here also limit them to the city's standing noise ordinance.
Thank you.
So Hannah, I'm curious, if we continued it, would staff find that beneficial to come do some research on some performance-based standards, et cetera, that they could propose, or are we just holding up the process for no good reason kind of thing?
In that case, if you are wanting to explore different options, then it might be better to recommend denial and let the council hear it. But in your recommendation for denial, state why you would like to deny it. Not that it's outright, but that it's worth exploring other options. And you would like to see a more complete package that's more than just a tweak to these amendments. What you're pitching is kind of something new.
I totally agree.
Okay. You're up for that?
I'm up for that. And fundamentally though, too, like the last one we approved, city council said no. So there's some differing kind of opinions on this matter, which are kind of hard to grapple with. Like, we know where our heads are at, kind of we get there because we get educated, and the council, it's not that they're not educated, it's that they're being driven by a few different priorities than we're taking
Different
on.
motivations.
I'm not educated on data centers.
But we're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're
working on
Getting
it.
more so.
I'd be in support of denying with that intent. And I think the recommendation is the goal is some set of performance standards that get us good data centers, meeting current technology, emissions, other things like that. That's part of what I would recommend is
So am I off here, but the language doesn't seem to match what we're looking at, because it talks about a variance and an appeal, almost like it didn't get quite edited correctly. This is a legislative act, so are we not just recommending in this case? We are, right?
You would be. I apologize if there were errors in the template that I didn't catch.
Yeah, okay. So we are recommending approval or denial in this case of the text amendments. I would state our concerns as we feel like a blanket ban essentially is too strong. And we would like to explore alternatives such as performance-based standards that would meet and mitigate the concerns of the public concerning data centers, but allow projects that are good for the community to move forward in some way. Did that capture it there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of talked about this a little bit last commission meeting, but I think, I mean, the financial benefits that the public comment described are significant, right? That's like what, 5 to 10% of our yearly budget from one customer or from one business. But I think community sentiment around data centers is so so emotional right now. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I mean, like that there are very strong feelings about data centers. And I don't want it to just be like, oh, they bring in the city a lot of money, so we should allow it. There are lots of things that bring in lots of money, and I don't think we should necessarily allow all those things. I guess I would want to see it really clearly tied to community benefits. I mentioned like the community benefit agreement idea, but like, what are you bringing that's tangible to the community? That's not just property tax revenue. Like, what are things that you're doing to, I mean, you're taking a valuable land in an industrial space that could be a different kind of business, or, you know, I'm not saying that's not the highest best use, but I just think there are ways that we can make something that's so emotionally charged, make it feel more palatable. Like, if these things are coming and this is like the future utility service of the 21st century, how do we make it benefit our community and not just financially? I don't know.
Yeah, on the finance side, it is, I think Anne made this comment about, okay, if there was something else using those 2 acres, what would that bring, kind of thing, right? The opportunity cost of these is very interesting.
Right. I can't think of an industrial use that's bringing in that kind of money on 2 acres.
Yeah, per square foot,
Right. Yeah.
it's got to be very efficient. But, you know, it'd be nice to have some data to back up that suspicion. Tell us more about community benefit agreements. I'm not familiar with them.
I think it's the city of Detroit is where I stumbled on it. Any project over a certain dollar threshold or that utilizes more than 50% of city-owned land comes into the deal, or would result in displacement of X number of residents or something. Then it triggered this community benefit agreement in which you had to meet with a council of 7 community members from the affected community and decide, okay, these are the 5 things we will offer, whether it's
Like a park or
a park, or $10,000 to each resident that's being displaced, or first right of refusal at one of the new affordable units, or, you know, whatever that looks like. But yeah, just like coming together with the community and agreeing on, okay, these are the benefits that we feel offset the impacts and the externalities of this to our community.
That's interesting. I don't know. I mean, the criteria you just state, I don't know how many data centers would fall in that, right? They're not
Right.
building in residential zones or.
Right. But we could carve it out in such a way where it makes sense. Like, okay, if you're bringing these types of uses to our community, we recognize that they're going to come, but we feel that we feel that it requires us a little bit more than just tax revenue to make us want this in our community.
To make it palatable.
Yeah.
Like you said.
Yeah, depending on what kind of negatives they brought with them. I don't think it's wrong to ever ask for more.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the idea of charging people for their externalities in some way, right? And I think that's what this is getting at.
And kind of like the conditional use permit, it's saying these are the standards that matter to us as a community. Like,
Yeah.
instead of it being every rezone, we have the same conversation and the same, okay, are you displacing people? Are you doing this? Are you doing this? These are the standards that matter to us as a community. They're codified. We want to know how you're doing these, how you're handling this.
Okay, so are we ready for a motion on this one?
You want to do it?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do this one. I never do them, but we're down a few people, so I'll go ahead and do this one today. I just feel like I talk a lot as the chair, so. I move that we recommend denial of item 1, development services request ordinance text amendments to Title 14 to remove power generation as a permitted use in the data center overlay zone and update environmental impact requirements, with the attached recommendation that we consider performance-based standards or other means to make sure that we are allowing good projects to move forward and not making a blanket ban.
I will second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? I'm good with the wording?
I'm good with the wording, but I might add something like, with the intent that we can capture the changing technologies, react to the changing technologies better than just this blanket.
Especially the ones that mitigate
Right.
concerns, right? Yeah.
And
So-
I'd like to add, I like the strictness that the council's going for. I appreciate that they're being careful about this.
Yeah, and the clean cut nature, I think, is
Yeah.
good as well. Okay, does staff feel comfortable with that language there to recommend? Okay, so we've already had a second. We'll go ahead and begin voting.
Aye.
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 And I'll vote aye. So the item 1 is recommended to be denied. unanimously. Let's go ahead to item 2. Terry Cirac requests project plan approval for an 8-unit apartment building in the CR zone located at 71 West, 880 North, in the North Park neighborhood. And Dustin Wright is going to present that for us.
All right, thank you. So this property here was rezoned last year. If you remember, there was a concept plan that came with that rezone for an apartment building with 5 units at that time. After that got approved, they went through the process to do a text amendment to the code to some of the design standards to make it so that they would be able to get more units to fit on that site through kind of redesigning it a little bit. So that got approved, that text amendment. And so this project plan is pretty similar to that design, but just a little bit different, and is coming in at 8 units. So here's a look at the main level. So it's parking underneath the building, and then 2 units or 2 stories above. And here's the landscape plan that's in staff report and some elevations showing that new design with, so you'll remember the old one had the entry to the parking over on the side that the code required, and the text amendment allowed for that central access to get back there. So there's kind of a look at what that looks like from the street view and from the back of the property. Here's some of the floor plans. So this is 6 1-bedroom units and 2 2-bedroom units. Parking wise, they meet the parking requirements. So 14 stalls would be required for the number of units and bedrooms, and they're providing 15, so 1 additional parking stall. And then here's a look at the site plan. You guys did receive a email from a neighboring property that there's a boundary line dispute there on the west side. So the city doesn't get involved, with those property line disputes. We look at it as far as the information that we've been provided here, that this parcel of land, as shown, would be able to meet all the zoning requirements. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Dustin. Questions for staff?
Yeah, can you just mention the detail of the property line dispute a little bit? And so is there, so from your point of view, while you don't get involved in it, can you tell us what it is, and is it germane to this question or not?
Yeah, so from what I understand, again, I don't understand all of it, and I'm not getting too involved there, but it's just that west boundary line, that there's a dispute, I guess, as to where that is.
My question, maybe to ask it better, is that how should that impact our discussion here? Should it come into play at all?
I don't think it should. I think we're just looking at the project. Does it meet what's in the code? The property owner and the adjacent property owner are going to have to work out any disputes that they have with their surveyors and whatever other means, but it's not really something that we would need to focus on here tonight.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff?
Man.
Yep. So
Along those same lines, though, sorry, you want to move off, and I do too, but it suggests that, and I'm just trying to understand it, there's only about 3 feet of total separation between the 2 buildings, but I'm looking at the aerial and I don't understand where that is. Do you understand where they're talking about, even though you're not going to be in the middle of any negotiation? I'm just trying to understand some of those parameters here.
Yeah, so this darker gray square in the center, that's the building footprint. So you can see between there and the dashed property line there, there's at least 10 feet, probably maybe even a little bit more of space there. So I'm not sure where that 3 feet between the 2 buildings come into play. But
I wonder if they were mistakenly looking at the ends of the parking stalls that stick out.
Maybe. Okay.
yeah, so this building is over, it's half over those stalls, and then half of those are, open to the air above. So The building doesn't go all the
Okay.
way to the property line.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Dustin. Oh, sorry, Ann House.
Sorry, there's no ownership, right? This is just for students.
This is rentals.
Rentals.
She's asking.
Like you can ask the applicant that. I believe that's the case, that it's just apartments to be rented.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and invite the applicant forward at this time, and you will have 15 minutes for your presentation.
Hi, Planning Commission. Thank you for meeting with me. My name is Terry Cirac. My residence is Huntington Beach, California.
Sorry, 1 second.
My name is Terry Cirac. I'm from Huntington
Maybe
Beach,
try the
California.
other one. It's still not picking up.
Hello?
There we go.
Yeah, okay. Start my time over. My name
Yeah.
is Terry Cirac. I'm from Huntington Beach, California, and I also have a residence here in Provo. Thank you for meeting with me, and Mr. Pepperoni, thank you for joining. What I'm looking for and is approval of the project. The previous times that we met, some of the concerns that you had were the elevations and some of the landscaping plans that we had, and wanted to take a little bit more. We have fully developed the plans with the civil engineer and the structural, mechanical, electrical. We're ready to submit for a building permit. We have with me today, I have Roger Dudley, if there's any questions regarding the civil engineering or any questions about lot lines. Some of the things that we show currently, this home that was existing was built in 1946. And one of the lot lines that shows on this Utah County recorder shows that the property line goes directly through our house. I don't think that's correct. And also it shows that our property line on the south goes into the Metler properties, which it's not our property. And what we're asking to do is to build within the 63-foot setback, and not setback, but the size of our lot. And we have we do have apparently some discussion that we need to have maybe a boundary line agreement with our neighbors, and maybe work out those dimensions on the south, us being in their parking driveway and us concerned with the property line. What we're willing to do is to have, again, this property has been surveyed. We can set some boundary markers and have them look at that. And then, but we have all the required setbacks. We are 10-foot away from their property line. So we are not building on their property line or close to it. So if we have any questions, I'd like to turn some time over to Roger Dudley if you have any questions regarding that. Would that be maybe afterwards?
It would be. We'll ask questions at
Okay.
the end. So
All right.
go ahead and finish your presentation, and we'll ask our questions.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Here, stick here for a second. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
Yes, hi.
I bet you know what my question is. Rentals
bikes.
or are we going to rent? Or are you going to sell?
Oh, we are going to rent, and we have had discussions with the BYU Medical Center. We're about a block away from there, and we have some excitement about that. But our intent is to rent to college kids, and that's what the complex that I have around the corner and the adjacent properties. I think everybody on that block rents to college kids. I don't think there's any
Well, there's
ownership.
there are condos there, right? There's condos just north, and then there's some more condos just across.
Yeah, I'm saying on our block, I don't believe that there is any owners, but across the street, there is some condos, on 880, which would be north, that there are some condos right there. But
Although
don't
I would
believe
imagine
it's-
most of those are rented to students as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
Just where it's at.
we're kind of in the heat of BYU land, so.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant while he's up here? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that, we'll go ahead and open the meeting for public comment. Do we have any neighborhood council members here? Okay, not seeing any, we'll open it to the general public. A reminder that you have 2 minutes to make your comment, and this is time for comments only. We'll ask questions at the end if we have any. Okay, please come forward. State your name and city of residence.
My name is Tim Metler, resident of Springville City. I am with the Foxwood Properties, which is to the east, and the Foxwood Apartments, Metler Inc. to the south. There is a deed overlap there, and nobody from the development side said anything. What happened is I happened to get sent the plans, so I sent those over to the title company. I said, could you please plot this out and determine if there's a deed overlap? And they came back and said yes. The only thing that I'd been contacted about is whether or not we would grant a construction easement, which the answer on that is no. So I know the city says, well, we don't get involved in boundary line disputes. This is the issue, is that if there's a deed overlap, my understanding is that the setback requirement is from whatever the determined property line is. So I talked to Todd Dudley, and what he told me this morning when he called me is, well, there's 1.5 feet. What we're proposing is from your edge of your wall and foundation, we're proposing a 1.5 foot property line. And then from there, we're proposing another 1.5 feet to the building. So I don't know if he spoke wrong, but I was told 3 feet between the two buildings. I'm the one that sent the email this morning, and that's where that came from. Todd, obviously they don't have any pin stake out there. I said, I'd really like to meet on site. And he's like, well, we can't probably do that till next week. So what I'm not requesting a denial, but I'm requesting a continuance on this so that we can get this resolved. Because again, I know the city says I don't get involved in property line disputes, but I believe that the setback for the building, that this property line dispute may impact that setback for the building. So yes, I do think it impacts this project until we get that resolved. So that's what I would like to have happen as a continuance. I like the fact it's an old house there. I like the project. I don't have a problem with the project being proposed. I just have a problem with where the
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Okay, not seeing any, we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Go ahead.
Bill, can you help us? I understand we're not going to get involved in a dispute, but I think I understand what he's requesting, which is time to figure it out because the setbacks would be wrong. If we approve this, where does that put that conversation if there is a setback problem, in fact?
Well, I would like Roger Dudley to come up and tell me what the setback is for that building. Because it looks to me like the setback for the building is about 10 feet. Those are 20-foot parking spaces or 18-foot parking spaces, and 18 feet. You can see the dimension, and that building is going halfway through it. So it looks like substantially more than 3 feet to me. I'd like the project engineer to verify that.
That would be true. The site plan as it's presented, I'm Roger Dudley. I'm the engineer for the project. Yeah, it's exactly as the site plan shows, the 10-foot offset to the building. The parking goes almost to the property line on each side. If you'd like, I could comment on the property dispute if you'd like me to do that. If we could see that slide, the first one that shows the homes, I think it was the first slide, Bill. Yeah, if you understand, we've done an extensive survey of the entire block. This is an interesting block because it's on the perimeter of the Provo City block system. Some of the deeds in this block are tied to section corners. Others are tied to the block corner across University. So the reason, if you'll notice the blue lines, the county recorder's office is showing these properties according to the blue lines. Obviously, the blue lines do not represent where the actual property lines are. If you notice that on the south side, there is a blue line that extends completely into our parking. There's a blue line that goes through the middle of the existing home. That is not correct. And our red line would take in almost all of the parking to the property to the west of us. So you see there's a shifting there. East and west from 100 West to University Avenue, there's ample property for all of these properties to have exactly what their deed calls for. I would suggest that there needs to be a boundary agreement so that we can get the county recorder's records in the proper place. But we've done extensive survey. Would be happy to set the corners for Mr. Mettler and go over that with him in some detail. But I think as a surveyor, and I've done this in Utah County for 50 some odd years, so I feel confident that the properties are there. There's no intent to encroach on Mr. Mettler's properties on either side. And I believe that it's just a matter of having that ironed out. I don't know that it's necessary to table the item. I don't think anything there will change, but we would be happy to meet with him and answer any questions that he has. Happy to answer any questions that you may have as well.
Bill, got follow-up comments on that?
Just that the next step, if project plan is given, the next step is for a building permit to be issued. If a construction easement is required by Public Works and the property owner can't obtain that, that would hold up the building permit being issued. That's the safety valve or the guard there.
Could I comment to that? Maybe just a moment. We talked to David Day, city engineer, about this item of the necessity of a construction easement. I think the reason engineering was requiring that is that they understood that this building was going in the ground and that the parking that's shown is underground parking. That's not actually the case. The parking is surface parking. As you see on the rendering, if we could see those renderings just quickly, taking too much time. You notice that the parking is not underground. There will be no retaining walls going down on the property lines. The parking is all surface. And so the cars that are parked under the building are at the same level as the street. So there is no basement as you would think. I think that was probably wasn't explained appropriately to the city engineer. I don't believe.
If you look closely at the left edge of this drawing, you can see the car sticking out beyond the wall of the building.
Right.
Which is what the aerial illustration shows.
Excuse me. If we were going into the ground, then there would need to be a retaining wall constructed very close to the property line. In this case, that's not necessary.
So are you able to speak to this? I guess the setbacks is my question for you, but specifically this 1.5 foot kind of issue that's been brought up.
I can. On a standard parking, double loaded parking, we have 18-foot spaces, 24-foot driveway and an 18. So 24, 18, and 18 adds up to 60 feet. Then if you have a curb for the parking, that would be another foot. So that's 61 feet. Our property is 63 feet wide. So basically that allows for a foot on each side for landscaping or for whatever. In other words, we don't need that. Typical parking here is required 60 feet wide. Our property is 63 feet wide. Yeah.
But the building's much less than that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's
Right.
about 10 feet off the property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure who to address this question to, but is there any concerns about having this? I think of it as innovative where the cars hang out or not completely enclosed by the building. Is there any concern with that? Either aesthetics or neighborhood wise or anything?
I don't know. It's an interesting thing that I don't think we see, right? I think of it from an economic point of view. You know, they're not covered parking. They can't advertise it as such, right? It's half covering. But it does make efficient use of a tight space and allows redevelopment that way. I mean, overall, the building looks a little bit like, I don't know, something you might see in a swampy area or a flood zone where it's up on stilts, right? It kind of has that look to it.
But they've also provided the landscape plans, so I think they're completing or complying with the
Yep.
the goals of the landscape and the parking and
And I do like that they put a lot of bushes and stuff in ways that might kind of block that from street view. So
This might be a question for staff, but are there bicycle parking requirements for infill projects?
let's go ahead and let the engineer sit down. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, there's bicycle parking. Let's see. Shows it best. So on the back here, there's bike parking to meet our city code from what I recall. I don't recall the numbers off the top of my head, but when we looked at it earlier in our review, they had the bike parking was met there.
How is that being secured? Because I know, I mean, a traditional parking structure, or maybe what we thought we were getting with this was sort of below ground, got concrete. If I'm not mistaken, long-term bicycle parking requires it to be fully enclosed. Is there any kind of fencing, or what's the security of these racks? Are they just exposed? Is it just a rack in the ground with exposure to the public, with like all those cars were?
That's a good question. And maybe we can bring the applicant back up to see if they have recall on that. I don't recall off the top of my head. Apologize.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
So the area by stair number 2, we do have bike racks. And also, if you look across the way, it's called custodian. With the high-end bikes, we'll go ahead and put them in there. And we're doing that currently at our project at 841 North University Avenue, where we have a lot of young men, young women that have some of the higher end electric bikes, and then we store those on site for them. With the extra parking stall that we have, we could always entertain a cage, which it could happen or couldn't happen, but we do have one extra parking stall, and that could be determined. But a lot of the kids, they really do walk and ride their bikes and scooters from our complex and from here too.
Yeah, I think it's great that it's being provided. I just wanted to make sure that it's meeting those city standards, just because that security aspect does change. Yeah, if you have a nice bike, you don't want to just leave it
I know
out on the block.
I know.
But if that custodian space is being utilized for that, I think that kind of addresses.
We had a
that too.
few disappear, but then we do have lockdowns with keyed door numbers where they can park their electric Segway scooters and also bikes. And we're proposing the same thing. Maybe custodian shouldn't have been the name on there. Maybe storage, but that's what it would be.
I wonder if maybe even for the ground level racks, it just having like a fence around that portion. I don't know if that.
It'd be very easy to do.
Yeah.
It may be too much, but with the extra parking stall, that's something that we would consider. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, what other thoughts do we have on this one?
As mentioned, we've seen this project before. It's come back kind of as we were thinking with 8 apartments and sufficient parking. Seems like it meets all standards. The property line dispute notwithstanding, I'm in favor of approving it.
Other thoughts?
I mostly agree. It fits with the neighborhood, so we've seen it before.
Yeah, particularly in this area. I mean, my only thought is I want to make sure we're not inserting ourselves into a property line issue and let it get figured out. But my understanding is until the property line dispute is resolved, it still gets stuck until regardless of what we do here, right? So I think I just want to make that clear that we're not saying we think there's no issue. We're just saying we're going to let it resolve itself. We're not making a statement on where we fall on that. If it turns out the lot is narrower than they think, if it's 1.5 feet, it sounds like they actually still have space to do it within a little bit less, right? And so, because it's 61 feet when you do the curbs, and they had 2 feet extra, the 1.5 dispute. So, I'd be comfortable moving forward with it and let them figure it out.
I do wish it were more attractive. I know it fits in the neighborhood, but I'm like, oh, guys, come on. Like, the windows could be bigger, or a balcony or two, or let's unify the color instead of 3 different colors, 3 different textures just for the heck of it, or a flat roof with a low pitch roof that feels, anyway. I don't think any of those are our business though, right?
Bill, do you want to comment on our leeway as far as design standard type stuff like that?
Yeah, this meets the design standards. And so, yeah, there's
Yeah, none of my business. Okay,
little latitude.
okay.
Okay. Maybe next time they revise the design standards, we'll make sure you're on that group and you can control them in the future. Okay, any other thoughts? Are we ready for a motion? Who wants to take it?
I'll take it.
Okay.
I move that that we approve item 2, the request for project plan approval for an 8-unit apartment building in the CR zone located at 71 West, 880 North in Provo.
I'll second it.
Okay, any comment on the, or discussion on the motion? Okay, go ahead and start voting.
Aye.
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 And I'll vote aye. So item 2 passes unanimously, and I hope we can figure out that property dispute and it can move forward. So, okay,
I move that we adjourn.
thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.